Welcome, dear listeners, to a podcast that's about to transform the way you lead, the way you grow and thrive in your life and career. Get ready to embark on a journey filled with inspiration and self-discovery. This is Afsheen, the host of the Getting Real podcast. And this season, I'm delighted to be joined by none other than my co-host, Vicki Davitashvili. Vicki?
Are you ready to embrace the joy of leadership, the power of self-discovery, and the limitless potential of your career, and ultimately your entire life? Join us on this incredible journey of transformation.
Yep, stay tuned because the best is yet to come. Welcome back, listeners and fans and followers. My name is Afsheen and I am the CEO of Phoenix Coaching Company and the host of the Getting Real podcast. And I am joined today by my partner in crime and friend, Vicki Davitashvili. And Vicki and I get together occasionally to have a conversation on key topics that revolve around leadership and self-management and self-leadership. And today, Vicki and I are getting together to do a bit of a retrospective, if I may call it that, on our journey together as Vicki and I move forward onto new pastures. We're excited to do this retrospective together. I'm going to turn it over to Vicki and ask her to tell us what to expect in this conversation today. Vicki, over to you.
Oh, Afsheen, thank you. So delighted to be here. Always love our conversations. Always love connecting with each and every one of you who comes and who listens and participates in our discussions. So what can we expect today? So I think we can expect yet one more heartfelt conversation full of insights. I think this is going to be more reflective than more perhaps of a teaching session. But this is me and Afsheen really doing a look back. And you know, whether it is the start of the year, whether you're in the middle of the year, it is always so good for us to take a pause, to take a breath in, to breathe out, and to reflect. And so I think this is going to be a lot more of a reflective conversation, if nothing else.
Yay. I'm so excited, Vicki, and I'm looking forward to it, as always. And we were just commenting on how we seem to be also in tune with regards to just how we're showing up together. So, and you can see Vicki and I are twinning today. So Vicki, you and I talked about this last week, and we said we're going to touch on three key topics that we'd like to discuss, like to unpack together in a sort of reflection, retrospective of the journey that we've shared so far over the past few months and weeks. And so the first question that we are posing to each other today is as follows. So what comes up for me and for you is on the topic of past episodes and those that have had the greatest impact on you or have been a highlight for you. So would you like to start, Vicki, with sharing an episode that has been a highlight for you?
Oh, Afsheen. So it's interesting. So for those of you who are listening right now, Afsheen and I said, well, why don't we just kind of maybe reflect on one or two episodes? And, you know, I went back and I looked at the richness of the content that we created. And as I was looking at it, I was like, I literally can't pick just one or two, so don't make me. And, you know, I went to school for entrepreneurship. The number one rule of entrepreneurship is that rules are made to be broken. So I'm breaking our rule, Afsheen. And this is why I wouldn't say it. I actually chose 4, so forgive me, but I feel like there were so many rich discussions. I just couldn't narrow it down to 1 or 2. So the ones that really touched me, affected me, changed me, right? As I both researched the topic as well as got your insights during the conversation. These are my top 4. The first one that really affected me was around the imposter syndrome. This is something that I have struggled with a lot. And I think that, we tend to teach the thing that we want to learn the most. And so the imposter syndrome is something that I know I've struggled with a lot in my career, maybe less so now, but there are still moments when that absolutely comes up for me. And I remember researching that the energy behind the imposter syndrome is a lot of perfectionism. It's actually because you are a high achiever. And so as I was learning and leaning into this topic, it brought so many ahas to the forefront for me and explained so much to me about me. And so that I found to be incredibly impactful as we both leaned into the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's one. Another one that really affected me was healthy conflict, right? And even posing the question, I remember you asking the question, is conflict healthy and can conflict be healthy, right? Because we tend to be so afraid of conflict because we're so afraid of tension. We're so afraid of having the difficult conversations. And so I love the fact that you asked the question, and absolutely it is in that conflict that we can find truth and that we can grow the most, right? And it's in that tension, right? You go to the gym. Why do you go to the gym? To exercise those muscles that haven't been exercised before. And so that is a conversation that really sticks out to me and I think is going to live on and help so many people as they go in their personal lives and professional lives, and try to unravel, the gift that lies in that conflict. Another one that we talked about, and again, I'm sorry, there just have been so many amazing conversations. So the third one that I chose is psychological safety. May is Mental Awareness Month. And let's talk about psychological safety and how important it is to create an environment where people feel seen, heard, understood, but most importantly, safe to take risks and to make mistakes and to fail, and to create a culture at work where failure is just a step towards success. It is not the end all and be all. It is just a baby step towards exactly where you want to get to. And I exercise this, and I'm incredibly sensitive to ensuring that I create a culture of psychological safety on my team. And I found that conversation to be tremendously important and something that I would take and replay with my team members, because I think understanding as a leader, especially because you set the tone. You set the tone. And what tone do you want to set on your team? And we have data showing how teams are thriving. Talk about business outcomes and impact with teams that have psychological safety. And last but not least, and I'm so sorry, the art of getting promoted. How many of you who are listening right now are screaming amen? Because I think everyone is asking, how the heck do I get promoted? This is one of the most frequently asked questions that I get from people inside and outside of the organization. And the truth is, there's an art and a science to it. There are specific steps and tactical steps, and I love the lens that you brought into it as a true experts, subject matter experts in human, relationships and in development, right? And really getting underneath what you can do, the types of conversations you can have, mentorships, right? Versus, a sponsor, like really explaining the elements of that. I feel like that's the science of it. And then there's the art of it, like how do you get the visibility? How do you stand up? How do you go above and beyond? What is like having scope that's big enough to get promoted within, right? And then really kind of drawing a line and saying, listen, sometimes if you do want to get promoted, there just isn't a role available for you. It's not about you not being a superstar. Yeah. It's just that the role doesn't exist. So what do you do then? And you know what? giving yourself the permission to get up and go and leave and go where there is a role that fits where you want to be in your profession and your career junction right now. Yeah. So anyways, I pause here. I know I've said so much. And again, rules are made to be broken, my friend. I broke the rule. I chose 4 double. I could have chosen more, but I will stop here just because I feel that all of these conversations were so important and so impactful to me as a human and as a leader.
Oh, you are fabulous. And I love that we broke the rules. And we probably should have definitely, maybe one time in the future, we can do one about breaking the rules at work and how that works and why it should work and why you shouldn't not do it. Because I think that's a subject all in its own. And I would totally get behind that one. So yes, thank you very much. And oh my gosh, every time you picked a title of a podcast, I was reminded of all the nuggets of wisdom and all the tools that we offered in preparing for that podcast. So what we gathered, what we researched, what we put together, then what we talked about, then what we shared. I mean, I'm so proud of that, and I know we're going to be talking about what it is that is what all of this is in a way meant for us, but I just want to say I'm so proud of what it is that we created and manifested in the world, because I really think it's something that will create value and it lives and breathes even beyond this conversation and all of the conversations. So something that's sustainable, and I think that's so important. Oh, Vicki, thank you for reminding me. I was thinking of my favorite, and I did stick to the rules because I'm a bit of a rule keeper rather than a breaker, but I think that's why we're so good with each other, because we are each other's yin and yang, as they say. And for me, I think the first one that we started with when all of this almost didn't happen, I think, we had decided to embark on this journey of collaborating together and sharing our collective and different experiences and wisdom through this podcast, and then we found ourselves in the midst of crisis. By that I mean the Israel and Palestine war had just begun, and this followed by a year prior with the Ukraine and Russia war, and this followed by a year prior where employees had been through COVID, and it was almost as though too many things had been happening one after the other, and this one landed particularly closely for both you and I at this point. And so what I loved about that conversation was maybe what happened before that, because we decided to forge ahead in unity and be a voice for good. And the topic that we chose was holding the space for sensitive conversations in a way that was empathetic, in a way that was also thoroughly professional. We gave tips on how to be non-judgmental. We gave tips on how to be before you go into the conversation, and then what to do when you're in the conversation. So we had a beautiful yin-yang experience there where we were talking about, and I think that's the magic of you and me, doing this together, is that we had this beautiful yin-yang moment where we were able to provide suggestions and ideas and opportunities for reflection on how as a leader you can be and what as a leader you can do to hold the space for sensitive conversations that almost every leader was facing at that time, and will continue to face, as we all know, as the world continues to change and evolve. So I feel like that was a super important conversation, not just for the content that we shared and the wisdom that we shared and the value I feel it will create in a sustainable way, but also the intention with which we showed up to that conversation as a united voice when both of us were ourselves impacted by that in different ways. So I think that was a really important moment for me, and I will always remember that. And it's so hard for me to then choose a second one, right? So it almost felt as though that was the ultimate beginning, and so everything after that came from a place of how do we continue this value creation, and also help people see the work. Rather, how do we help people see the wisdom that we are imparting as not just wisdom for the benefit of their own reflection, but also for the benefit of the organization and the teams that they work in. And we made a very conscious effort, I know you and I both, to find data that supported all of our arguments. We made a very conscious effort to make a business case for many of our conversations, because we both feel very strongly about the fact that we do this work to create a sustainable impact that is measurable, and not simply because, it's nice to have this conversation. And you're right, I feel like we both learned. So it wasn't just that we were imparting wisdom, but we were ourselves gathering a lot of this, bringing it, and I feel more for it as well. My second one, and the reason I share this is because when you shared this concept with me, I had never had the privilege, I think, of even deep diving, even reflecting barely on the topic. And I think what's funny is that surprised me. I feel as though I spend a lot of time talking about stuff that I know about. So to come across a concept that was new to me at this stage of my career, I couldn't. Not only did it take me by surprise, I was kind of sad that I hadn't seen it, and then so there was so much in it that I'm so glad that you brought it to the table, and that was the concept of completion versus competition. It was such a gem of a conversation, in that it really shifted, or rather it really gave access to something new. That success can be the outcome of not just competing for something, but rather of being complete and achieving completion. And I love that. I think I loved it because it's a concept that's not talked about enough. It's a concept that takes away the edge of success and kind of rounds it a little bit, and brings others in as well. And I think for success to be sustainable, for strategic priorities to be met, more of us need to embrace that mindset, so that we can move forward in a healthy way, being leaders and leading teams and delivering business outcomes as well. So I think that was a concept that I found very rich and very enriching. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you to you for bringing that to the table and letting us have a conversation on that. And I stop here, Vicki. What comes up for you?
I love it. And I think that, once again, you highlighted just how much we learned and grew through this experience. And I think there is something so beautiful in growth. Yeah. And, if there's anything that's constant, it's change. Yeah. And I love the way that you and I embraced the change. And this kind of brings me to my next question, that I know, how do you find yourself being different today than you were? I think it's been 6 months, right? So we started this, I believe, back in October. We're of 2023. We're now in May of 2024. 6 months, that's a half a year. That's midway. So how do you find, what shifted in you? Professionally, personally? I'd love to hear your perspective.
When I was coming into this with you, it was off the back of something else that I'd been doing for the podcast, because I had taken on a very different role in the previous episodes and the previous seasons of the podcast, where I was the interviewer and the person in the hot seat was the person that I was interviewing. So the fact that I was going to go into a different space where I was going to put myself in the hot seat and then that had been percolating in my mind for a long time, was my readiness and to put myself in the hot seat, and yet not knowing if I wanted to do that completely on my own, or if I would love to have somebody share that with me so that could be this easy banter, and then wondering who that person could be, right? And interestingly enough, you and I met because of the previous seasons in which I had put you in the hot seat. And I thought to myself, here's someone who I could have some really great banter with, who could be the yin to my yang and bring a corporate perspective where I bring a more coaching and development and learning perspective. And I was really delighted, and I cannot tell you how much fun I've had since then until now, playing off of each other. And that said, also have learned, because every time we did the session, every time we decided we'd do an episode, all we did was say, here's the topic, right? So for those of you who are listening, if you want to know about the workings of our minds, the way it really worked was we'd just have a topic, and then Vicki and I would go our separate ways, and we'd do our research and our thinking independently of that, without influencing each other. And then we'd come back and we'd just spontaneously have a conversation on it. And every time Vicki had a point of view that was more, and my point of view was more and also different. And somehow all of that came together in this beautiful medley of wisdom that we were then able to share with the world and hopefully create some impact with as well. So the way I'm different is that I'm not in the back seat anymore. I put myself in the hot seat, and that I was able to share that with someone who was the perfect complement to what it is I have to offer in the world. And that has given me a deep sense of allyship and camaraderie, and also a greater trust in the universe. Because I can honestly tell you, we didn't know we were going to do this. It wasn't like we planned it. It just so happened that Vicki and I met one day, and I asked the question, she said yes, and we didn't look back after that. So there is a greater trust in the universe as well. So let me ask you the question, Vicki. So I would love to know, how are you different now from when we started together?
How am I different? I think, Afsheen, I'm more courageous, if I may be so bold and admit that. I remember feeling like a schoolgirl the first time the first time you and I did the podcast, because I'd been on a couple of podcasts, but, I wanted to make sure that I brought value to the conversation. So I remember for the first podcast, really preparing and asking myself and introspecting on how can I be of value to this woman, to her listeners, to the people that would be consuming his content, right? How can I be of service? Because everything I do, I really want to be of service to humanity. And so I remember kind of like, when you're preparing for a test, like almost over preparing for it, because I was like jotting down notes, and it's funny because now when
I would never have guessed, Vicki. Wow.
And at work, it's so funny because at work I just go in, I almost don't prepare. I just I'm going to listen, I'm going to be an active listener, and I'm going to add value as I go along. And it's interesting that I think it was one of the bigger shifts is that, I would absolutely do the research and I prepare for our topics because of course I want to be of service and I want to create value. But at the same time, I was good with wherever the conversation was going to go and just having the courage to just flow with it, right? Instead of just kind of coming into it super prepared. And the not knowing became really fun. I wonder where this is going to take us. And just flowing with you and listening to you and participating with you, being in the conversation with you, right? Instead of at you. So I think courage is absolutely one of those shifts. I also learned a lot from you, right? So there are several ways to learn, right? There is a way that you learn on the job. Leadership. I've learned about leadership on the job in a way, right? Because it was by trial and error, making my mistakes, watching leaders that made mistakes with me and kind of saying to myself, I'm never going to do that as a leader, right? So I learned a lot through the practical applications of leadership. But I learned about the Lancioni dysfunctions of a team and the whole, structures and the frameworks, right? I didn't know that, I didn't know about these frameworks. I didn't know about all this research and academic insight, that can come into, the way that you lead an organization, the way that you lead as a people manager. And so you brought a lot of that to me, more of that formalized, academic, educated insight into leadership that I didn't have. Because I only, if we saw the car, I only knew how to put together the car because I'd been on the factory floor putting the parts and pieces together. I never really saw the CAD drawings and the designs and the engineering that went behind it. And so you gave me that. You gave me that insight. So absolutely learned a lot from you and grew from that. And I think you also made me disciplined. Believe it or not, showing up for our recordings creates a discipline, right? Having something on a regular cadence, I think is awesome. So you created the space where I felt safe. Speaking of psychological safety, I felt safe to share and to be authentic and to be vulnerable and to be open. And, I think that has been one of the scariest things to me in my life, in the sense that, my entire transformation journey for the past however many years has been, I grew up having a very perfectionist facade where everything is perfect on the outside, and it was not accepted for anything to not be perfect on the inside. And you didn't talk about the imperfections, right? And so I learned that there is a perfection in the imperfection. And I learned that the more I have the courage to be me and to be vulnerable, the more I create the safety and the space for others to do the same, because we are all human and we're all struggling in the same way. And so I really, you created that space for me, and I wanted to create that space for others by having the courage to be open and honest and to be imperfect and to be okay with the imperfection. And so that is the gift that you gave me and that this podcast gave me, and I am so grateful for it.
Oh, and I'm so grateful for you, because if it hadn't been for your lived experiences, the ones that you were talking about, I think that this would have been a very boring podcast because I'd be sharing the Lancioni triangle and all these other things, and we'd be missing here the lived experience of, hey, do you know this is what happened to me at work with an XYZ individual that I was leading, and you were so generous, I have to say, with your examples, this is what happened, or this is what I did, because through you we all learn, right? We don't just see the academic part of it, but we also see the application of things and how they manifest themselves. So thank you, because you took the time to make that possible. Otherwise, like I said, I think this would be a very boring podcast. So I do appreciate that you made it not boring. And you made it so much more meaningful, which leads me to my next question, Vicki, and this is my last one of you, and then you can ask me that back. And so the question is, what is next for you?
What is next for me? Oh my God, if only I knew. I can tell you. You talked about trusting the universe. I'm trusting the universe. Ooh. Mm-hmm. And I just take each day, one day at a time. But a couple of things that seem to be the theme lately, so I'll share. I feel what's next for me is more and more leaning into leadership and to being the best leader I possibly can be for my team. And that to me means being a servant leader. Mm. So a servant leader who comes and is open and is present in the moment, who listens actively, who provides value. It's interesting. I had some team members that got reorged into another group, and we're still kind of tangentially connected through work. And yesterday they were meeting with me, and before the meeting even started, it was just the three of us. They jumped in and they go, "Vicki, before we tell you about the project, can we just say one thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." I was like, "First of all, it's so good to see you guys." And I'm like, "I miss my whole team." And they're like, "Vicki, we miss you. We just want to tell you we miss you. And, we hope to be back on your team." And I was just like, oh my God, right? And it was just like, there was so much warmth and love and respect and camaraderie between the three of us. And then as the conversation went on, I always try to be super open and be an active participant in the conversation. And as we were talking, I started asking them this angle and that angle, and like, have you thought about this? And they were like, "Oh my God, Vicki, we hadn't thought of this. Thank you for giving us something to reflect on, giving us something to prepare." And I was like guiding them. I'm like, "Listen, before we walk into like the meeting with the 20 people, I was coaching them, guiding them." And they were like, "Vicki, this is what we miss about you. This is what, like, you always have our back. You always want us to shine." And so that is super important to me. I want to create value for the organization. I want to create value for my team members, because in growing them, grooming them, mentoring them, helping them get to where they want to be as people as well as professionals. So I will continue to lean into that. My scope continues to grow, which is an awesome place to be. And, I feel like my job continues to be incredible. On a slightly tangentially professional/personal front, right? I continue to lean into who I am as my whole entire authentic self. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, "Vicki, you're a working mom. You have, a career. You have a family. You seem to do all of these crazy fun activities. Like I did the pastry baking boot camp, and I do, aerial silk classes with my daughter on Saturday mornings. I take pottery, in the evenings." And I really just lean into my passions and the things that I love. And so out of that question, I've been inspired to create a program for working moms to help them to go from overwhelm to peaceful work-life balance. But in that, there's a journey. There's a journey of rediscovering of who you are. There's a journey of ending that inner loneliness that we feel and experience as working moms. There's a journey of ending the mom guilt. How many of us struggle with that? There's a journey of ending the procrastination transformation. And the thing that people don't realize is we don't procrastinate because we don't have time. It has nothing to do with time. It has everything to do with your inner beingness and the triggers that come up. It has everything. And there's a journey of then stepping in your self-empowerment. And how do you do that? And what is that energy of self-empowerment where you become unstoppable? You become unstoppable in your relationships. You become unstoppable at work. You become courageous, authentic, your whole entire self. And then your entire being starts to sing. You start to shine from within, and then people just naturally gravitate towards you, right? So I'm creating that, and I'm so excited, to start that journey, because I want to share my experiences. I now have the courage to share about my experiences, about my imperfect, perfect life, right? And I want to help as many working moms live a life where they can have it all. You can have it all. It's not about a balance. Let me burst your bubble. It's not about a balance. It's about an integration. So that's what I want to teach and impart in this world. So that's that. And then, of course, like just that isn't enough. So I'm also launching a tea company. And this is why I was running around my office. I wanted to show you a couple of super cute like things that I've started to do. And this is kind of like me going into my creative space. That's all this is about. Like, this is me like getting that out, right? So I've been creating like little tea packaging. I mean, I've never worked for a physical product company in my entire life. Everything I've ever produced was always intellectual property. I've never done anything physical. So I'm like literally working with my hands, and I'm just having so much fun with it. So I'm like creating little party favors, and people are having like a blast looking at them. And, again, it's tapping into wellness, it's tapping into my creativity, and it's bringing out a different side of me, a side I never knew was there, and there's a difference between being a corporate person versus an entrepreneur and the way the two think. So I've started reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I remember laughing at people about that. But, I'm learning to think differently, and I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm changing. And that is the best part of this entire experience, is the growth and the change. So I pause here. I know I'm the one nonstop.
Look at you. Your next sounds so exciting. I cannot wait to see how you manifest your next. I just can't wait to see it, and I am so here for you. I'm cheering for you on the sideline, because I think this is just, and I think what I'm really marveling at is your generosity. You're even in the next phase. It's all about giving. It's giving to your team internally. It's about giving health and wellness. It's about giving life balance to everything I know about you. Everything I see is that you are giving more into the world for the world to be healthier, happier, more connected with themselves and their purpose and what it is they're trying to create in the world. So your generosity just blows me away. And my wish for you is that in all of that, and I know you will, I just want to make sure I've gotten it out there, that you also continue to be generous to yourself, and that you continue to nourish yourself, because you are so abundant in how much you give, and it's important to keep your well full as well.
Thank you. Well said. And thank you for the very important reminder. And with that, Afsheen, I turn the question over to you. What's next for you, my friend? Where do you see your journey going? And how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot going on right now on my side as well. With the podcast, there's a change there as well. We will continue to make valuable content, because I think it's so super important that the work that I do is constantly creating value for others. And the way I do that is through creating valuable content, whether it's through podcasts, whether it's through writing, whether it's through hosting the book club and all the content we create for that and all the way. So for me, it's all about creating content or experiences for people where they can learn and grow as leaders. And so the podcast will continue as well. And the next season is going to be, and we're actually recording the next season now, it's going to include anonymous voices of people that are being coached by me, who I then walk through whichever topic they have on their mind that's specifically related to leadership or career. And we spend an hour together getting them from where they are currently to closer to where they want to be in that space. And that's a really magical journey to be on right now, and I'm really enjoying the conversations I'm having. And I hope that the value it will create is that others will see their own challenges also in these anonymous conversations and find ways, tools, again, in the same way that these conversations between you and I have had, that are applicable to their own situation and be able to be, and are able to find their own solutions within that, grow as leaders because of that. So that's what's going to happen with the podcast. And then, of course, the book club, which now we are in, today we just ended the third book club meeting. So the book club will continue. We're going to be hosting quarterly book club meetings virtually. Now we've even gone to in person, and I'm looking at maybe doing that more often than every quarter. So that will continue, and that leadership book club is something I'm super proud of, and the community is very diverse and it's growing. So again, valuable experiences of learning for people. And then we have an offering that's coming out soon for other coaches like myself who might be earlier on in their journey, so that they can leverage all the work that I've already done and just not recreate the wheel, because it's taken me years and years and years to put together a body of work that will be useful, that's useful for my clients and that's useful to me as a practitioner. And I have made a commitment to myself that one of the things I'd love to do is ensure that others who come and follow this journey of amplifying leadership capability and leadership team capability to have an easier go of it, and hopefully more space to create new things rather than recreating the wheel. So we're going to be offering a membership to coaches and trainers and team coaches where they can access all of our content from the 8 years that I've been doing this for myself. And therefore they won't have to recreate the wheel, and they can just utilize the content that we've used in pharma and FMCG and the beverages sectors that's been, successfully leveraged in all of these global organizations for themselves without having to start from scratch. So that's a really exciting piece that should be launching in the next 2 weeks, actually. So that's that. And then, of course, just the work that I continue to do with, the leadership teams in pharma and in FMCG and beverages, that also continues. And we've recently been shortlisted for a mentorship program with Bayer, which is a global pharmaceutical and crop sciences company. And so I'm going to be on that mentorship program with a couple of mentors, leaders in Bayer. And we'll be looking at, what I hope to be looking at with them is optimizing ways for the Phoenix Coaching Company to create and continue to create value in the world through the leadership development, leadership team development work that we do. So yeah, so much more to come. And I'm really excited about the journey as I'm standing from this vantage point. It just looks like the possibilities are endless.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. What is Afsheen in May of 2025 going to tell Afsheen of May of 2024?
The only thing and the most fun thing that comes to my mind right now is you go, girl.
I love that.
I am
I
so
love
feeling
that.
it already. And one of the things that I've learned from my most recent book club experience by reading the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza is the practice of proactive gratitude. In that you don't have to wait for a cause to affect your gratitude. Rather, be proactively, have proactive gratitude, and then see the world manifest and see your objectives manifest themselves in that way. So I am proactively, I'm showing proactive gratitude for what I'm going to be looking back on in May of 2025, because I think this is going to be an amazing year ahead. And I can't wait for us to reconnect over the next few weeks and months and talk about where both of our journeys have taken us.
Well, listen, my friend, if you're dreaming it, if you're desiring it, then it already exists. Yeah. You wouldn't have desired it if it didn't exist. So I'm so grateful for you. I am so grateful for you. I'm so excited to see your journey unfold, and I just can't wait for us to do this again.
Oh, thank you so much, Vicki, for everything. You have been such a wonderful partner in crime. I am very grateful to you.
Thank you. This was amazing. All right.
For me too. Stay tuned, because the best is yet to come.